Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of my weekly series where we talk about the new player guide is the name of the series. I kind of skipped over that, but where we talk about the hero of the week. We talk about an example deck as to you like this hero, where can we go next? And then we dive into the Nemesis kit and the obligation, just so that you understand the full spectrum of what this hero brings to Marvel Champions and what you can do for next steps. Like, you love this hero, where do I go from here? Yeah, let's just get into it, because this week we were talking about Sam Alexander, aka Nova. I will say that he is a character that I have probably less than 2 digits of experience with, because he is very popular. When the archetype is on the table to be played, I've seen a lot of people snatch him up, and I end up with somebody else from the archetype. And yeah, I guess we won't even dance around it. Champions, in terms of champions, he's a very popular character from what I can gather. And in just kind of like going back over his kit, I was reminded of just how consistent he feels. I don't know that powerful is the word that I would necessarily put onto his shoulders, but he's very consistent. I frequently think of Mario from the Smash Brothers games, where he's a very good all-arounder. In many ways, I feel like Nova is maybe not the first hero I'd pick up, but he is a very, I think, easy character to understand, and hopefully that will come across here. But let's get into it. We've got Sam Alexander, a alter ego with the civilian trait and 3 recovery. He's got 6 hand size, 10 hit points, and his alter ego action is spend a resource of any type, search your deck and discard pile for Supernova Helmet, add it to your hand, put it into play instead if you paid for this ability with a wild resource. Where is the helmet real quick? Yes. So we'll get into the finer points of this card in a little bit later, but the nice thing to know is that you have access to this helmet pretty much all the time. And one of the important things to take from this is that it gives him aerial, which is something that is going to be important to a lot of what you can do in the different aspects. Aerial is almost always clicked on for Nova. Like I said, we will get into the finer points of my feelings about the helmet in just a second. But yes, so Sam Alexander has the ability to grab the helmet on a pretty regular basis. And let's go talk about his hero form. So we've got Nova, a 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 defense hero with the champion trait and the response of, after you use one of Nova's basic powers, thwart, attack, or defense, ready Supernova Helmet. I don't even know. I think I might have mispronounced it. I might have just called it Nova's Helmet before. Either way. So yes, like I said, he's got pretty questionable basic powers. You are not buying into Nova for his ability to thwart or attack. Maybe you find 2 defense pretty good. I would say that overall, 1 defense is the point when I go, okay, this is a clear sign I'm not even supposed to defend with this character. 2 defense, 3 defense. Well, 2 defense, I guess, is the typical thing. And at that point, you can feel like, okay, I can reasonably use his defense from time to time. But his attack and thwart are definitely needed to be boosted. Usually that is, if I'm going to be using those parts of this character, which you kind of want to because you want to use the helmet up again. But if you're going to use those, it's going to be very aspect related. Are you going to bump up his thwart? Are you going to bump up his attack? Are you going to super bump up his defense? And go from there. And then obviously, if you go into leadership, you have the ability to bump up all of them. Look at, just as an example, my Ironheart deck was very much built around using leadership to bump up all of her stats. You can do the same thing with Nova. But yes, let's talk about his helmet real quick, because it is so integral. Usually I would talk about a signature ally, or I would go into some of the multiples here, but the Supernova Helmet is very, very important. Like I said, it gives him aerial. Additionally, it generates a wild resource, and wild resources are going to be very helpful for Nova. I think that's what makes him feel very consistent, and the ability to use it once, play out something, make a basic attack, make a basic thwart, what have you, and ready that helmet back up. Works in so many ways, because then you get another wild resource. You don't really care about any kind of requirements. But I think one of the important things here is that, or what I feel like protection is kind of an unsung hero for Nova. If I were to go look at his most popular decks, maybe I would be proven completely wrong, and Nova is very strong in protection. But I feel like because he can use his helmet as a resource. You can play a defense event. In multiplayer, maybe you make a basic defense for somebody else. You can ready that helmet back up and then use that resource again. And protection is very inexpensive for a lot of, well, for reactive events. Protection is very inexpensive. So that one resource can often make it so that you can just go out of your way. Maybe you get to ready Nova back up, which means that you have another chance during the round to use another basic power, to use the helmet again. And these two, while they don't seem powerful, I think that's one of the things that's important to remember. When the stats on the hero are low, that probably means that they have some kind of combination in their kit that's going to make them very potent. And I think that these two cards together are very powerful, and maybe it's not immediately obvious, but I think that over time you get to play with Nova, you get to play with the helmet, and you realize just like how much they are in this balance that makes, well, for a very consistent hero, like I said before. But let's get into some of his cards, because this is a doozy. So we have 3 copies of Potshot. And I think we're just going to practice this again. So we got 3 copies of Potshot, 2-cost event, attack, superpower, double the number of wild resources generated while paying for this card. So his helmet just pays for 1 for this. And hero action, attack, deal 4 damage to an enemy. So overall, as we get into some of his other cards, we will sort of see this. This is not an extremely impressive card. But the fact that it's 1 for 4 is, I think, more powerful than it may look. And this is what kind of leans into the word I keep saying is consistency. Consistency, consistency, consistency. He is not super powerful, but 1 for 4, super great. And just being able to kind of get that shot in. If this had aerial, it'd be even better, because then it would feed into other things. But Potshot, I think, is not the most impressive card, but I do think that it just adds on to that baseline of Nova being just you've got 3 of these, very consistent. Again, we've got 3 copies of Lightspeed Flight. It is a 2-cost event, superpower, thwart. I think it's important to highlight superpower. The last one was a superpower as well. That means that you can use something like deft focus. But superpower event, again, you double up the number of wild resources generated to pay for this card. And again, it is just a hero action, thwart, remove 3 threats from a scheme. It's not flashy. It doesn't feel like you're doing a whole lot. But again, you've got 3 copies of this. This is the kind of thing that I don't have a perfect memory, but I would say that the thwart and the attack events of heroes, granted, usually they're the big ones, but you normally see 2 copies of those kinds of events. And in this case, you're seeing 3 copies, which means that you are probably going to get to, like in every deck pass, you're probably going to get 2 of each of these. You're going to get that 4 damage in, you're going to remove 3 threat. You're going to get 4 more damage in somewhere, later on you're going to remove 3 threat. I don't always expect that I'm going to hit every single iteration of every single card, although with the helmet, that does also free you up a little bit. You're not using the cards in your hand, especially because they double up the wild resource. You're not using the cards in your hand to pay for cards. You're using the helmet to get off 1 or 2 events or 1 or 2 things every turn. And that just means that you get to use more of your hand to do things. And I think that that's really powerful, and I think that's really important to keep in mind. Then we've got 2 copies of Forcefield Projection, a 1-cost event, superpower again. Hero interrupt: when a friendly character would take any amount of damage from an attack, prevent 3 of that damage. If you paid for this card using a wild resource, deal 3 damage to an enemy. So just being able to, oh god, what's that word called? Oh, this is going to kill me now because I'm not going to remember. But kind of that Aikido, I think is the word, like to basically take an enemy's action and Aikido is like a fighting style where you can use your enemy's force to kind of like put it back on top of them. Like this being able to just say, I'm going to absorb 3 damage and I'm just going to throw it back at an enemy. And the thing is, it doesn't need to be the same enemy. So you could get attacked by the villain, prevent that damage, and turn it around and hit the minion that was going to attack you later. And that just sort of like I guess another word, flow like water kind of thing. Being able to just prevent 3 damage is already good enough. It takes that 10 hit points, because I guess I didn't even talk about that. 10 hit points, his 5 hand size, regular borderline hero there. But being able to take 3 damage and prolong how long you can be in hero form, and just turning that into damage somewhere else. Like, you could take a tough off something. You could take, like I said, take out a minion. You could do all these things while also protecting yourself and protecting other players, protecting your allies. It's all great. Then we've got 2 copies of Unleash Nova Force. It is an event that you play, a superpower that you can have max 1 per round. Hero action until the end of the round. Each time Nova defeats an enemy or removes the last threat from a scheme, ready Nova and draw a card. This is the card that really takes Nova and pushes him into, like, just beyond incredible. And this is why I believe that his attack event and his thwart event are sort of very low baseline. On curve, if you're only paying 1, they are, I would say, very good. But why they are sort of like overcosted normally at a baseline. Because with a card like this, you're taking out an enemy, you're dealing 4 damage to an enemy, you're removing the last threat from the scheme, being able to then ready up Nova, who can then make a basic action to ready up his helmet. Once again, this just feeds into this synergy that takes a character that, like I said, his stats are not extremely impressive, but you bump up his attack by 1 or his thwart by 1, and suddenly he's able to ready up, he'll do this, that, all these things. He's able to just turn it on in such a stellar way, and this takes that baseline consistent hero and just bumps them up to the next level. Drawing that extra card draw in Marvel Champions is kind of at a very steep premium. And it's something that I didn't necessarily think about until I really started to pay attention to cards. You have plenty of ways to have fairly consistent draw, but this is maybe 2, maybe 3 cards if you play it at the right time. You get the right turn set up and you're just going boom, 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 boom. Take this minion out, take that minion out, remove scheme from here. And suddenly these cards that you're paying for with just your helmet, you just fill up your hand. You suddenly have 6, 7 cards in your hand, and you're just like, wow. And once again, this goes back to why he is so quickly picked up by other players, because he is very powerful once you set all the dominoes up. And I think that might be one of the challenges with Nova, is I think he has the ability to win very quickly, but I've also seen games where he really thrives in settings where you just get to set everything up and say, okay, don't take this minion out because I'm just going to boom, 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 go through all of them. We're going to use the force field to buy us an extra turn here and put this minion in just the right place so that a attack for 4 can take them out. And yeah, he is a combo synergy enjoyer. Like, he's just the dream for them. And when he clicks, he clicks. Then we've got 2 copies of Connection to the Worldmind, a really cool resource. So Connection to the Worldmind just generates a wild resource, but it does not count towards your maximum hand size when it's in your hand. So that means that when you draw it, you look at it and you go, okay, my maximum hand size is 5, but now I get to draw a 6th card. And if you happen to draw another Connection to the Worldmind, you get to just draw a 7th card. And those kind of situations are kind of few and far between. But the fact that this just doesn't count in your hand is, I think, something that's deceptive. It doesn't sound like it's very powerful, but then you play it and you realize that you're getting to see that extra card, and suddenly, like I said, a hero that wants to set up these dominoes suddenly gets 1 extra piece to work with, and sometimes that can feel like cheating. And I would love to see a resource like this in this style exist somewhere else in the game, but I'm also kind of fine with this just being the one place where you can have that, because it just feels so fine-tuned for Nova. And we are just blowing through this. Okay, so we've got Jesse Alexander. I believe this is his dad. I'm almost certain that this is his dad. 2-cost support, Persona, Ultra Ego action, exhaust Jesse Alexander, shuffle 1 copy of Connection to the Worldmind. from your discard pile into your deck, draw a card. So this has limited use. If you don't have Connection to the Worldmind in your discard pile, you're not going to get a use out of this. But frankly, one of the drawbacks to Connection to the Worldmind, in my opinion, is that there's only 2 copies. But being able to see Connection 2 or 3 times, sorry, you're already going to see it 2 times. Being able to see it 3 or 4 times over the course of running through your deck is just great because, like I said, it doesn't take up any room in your hand. So it just is an extra card you get to draw. Not to mention the fact that, okay, yes, when Jesse Alexander makes you draw a card, if you happen to draw Connection to the Worldmind, you don't get to draw another card, but still, like, just overall, like, this is just... I'm struggling to express how synergistic all this is, and I hope that some of this is coming across, but this is a hero that is very synergistic, and I think that I'm just struggling to articulate the words that just spell it out correctly. But I will also say, Jesse Alexander, I will say, is sort of a low priority for me. Obviously, he has a very potent use, but when he's not useful, he's just not useful, and that's unfortunate. And last card, like I said, we are speed running this. 3-cost ally, Miss Marvel Kamala Khan. A 1 thwart, 1 attack, 3 health ally with the champion and inhuman trait. And hero response, after you play an event, exhaust Miss Marvel and deal 1 damage to her. Return that event to your hand. So we haven't gotten to the hero yet, but this is very much like the hero. I like the synergy, and I should make content about this. But I've played a like kind of tweaked version of the game where you're allowed to move identity specific allies around, and so to kind of play thematically, I put Miss Marvel with Captain Marvel, and that's a fun time. I think you push a little bit more to have some healing, but yeah, having Miss Marvel play with Captain Marvel is a different time. For Nova, this is just great because depending on what aspect you're in, there are going to be events that are super powerful. I sort of brushed over this, but Nova is very event focused. As you may have noticed, we had 1 support, 1 ally, everything else was events. I suppose we also had a resource, but he is so event focused that Kamala really can get a lot of use really quickly. This is the kind of hero that I would almost want to put, if I was in leadership, I'd want to put sidekick on her just to have the extra health, and then I would never attack with her. I would just have her to buy me events back. And I think that at that point, when he has 5 health, or if you just have any way, really, if you have any way to just give her extra health, there's probably basic cards that just aren't coming to me right now. And the problem is the trait lock is what gets me. There might be Avengers traded stuff that would do this, but I don't know if there's just a generic way to easily give her extra health. But if you give her extra health, you can just, especially with sidekick, as long as you go to heal once in 5 turns, she's just never going to go away, and that's just like so helpful. And I think this is one of those allies it's an ally that's secretly a support, because you could attack and thwart with her, but you might not, because you're just using her to bring back your pot shot, to bring back your Lightspeed Flight, and yeah, just cool. And I'll even say this. I have spoken very highly of every other card in this pack. I think this pack is very top notch. There are weak points. Like I said, Jesse Alexander has his weaker points. But I think Miss Marvel is my favorite just because she allows me to play more Nova. And I think that if it wasn't for her, I'd have to pick one of the other events, and maybe it would be a tie. But Miss Marvel is just maybe my favorite card in the pack just because, like I said, she lets you play more Nova. That's so cool. But let's go talk about the example deck. I got something spicy for you. All right, and here we are with the example deck, and opening this up was a trip. Opening that up and being like, yep, this is 4 packs, all right. I think that this is probably just from a point in time when the way that Marvel CDB categorized everything might be a little bit more flawed. Obviously, it's Star-Lord, Nova, the core set, and then Wasp and or Galaxy's Most Wanted are what this is comprised of. But because I believe we're talking about Genius, because Genius is in all of these, it pulled all of them, which is just sort of comical. But yes, this is probably very bare bones, very emblematic of what you can do with Nova. But I feel like in terms of a first step, this is the exact kind of thing that I think you want to do with Nova, because he so easily has aerial, and this deck pays that off. A lot of it is Nova's pack. The few things that are included from other places are very good. So let's just look at it real quick. So we've got Moon Girl, who comes from the Nova pack, but she is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, consequential damage, double consequential damage on both of those, 3 health, and then the Champions and Genius trait. And you can only play it if you are a champion or genius traded character. So this is something you play in Alter Ego. And then after you play Moon Girl from your hand, draw 1 card for each mental resource used to pay for her. While resources that are all over Nova's hand, all over Nova's deck, are going to be very crucial to allowing you to just draw 3 cards off this. But very good card. The fact that it's trait locked seems all entirely fair. Then we've got the Locust, who if you already have the pack, you're going to be familiar with. 2-cost ally, 1 thwart with double consequential and 1 attack. 2 health. Once again, you can only play if you're champion traded. And after the Locust enters play, add 1 aggression event from your discard pile to your hand. So this is just a nice way to buy something back. And in this deck, it's going to be super important because the aggression events in this deck are crucial to what you're trying to do, and you're going to get a huge payoff to all of this. So this is the card that I knew when I went to go search, just look for a Nova deck that has Dive Bomb. Oh, we don't have the other card in here. No. Oh, no. Okay. Sorry. Yes, this is. If you are not aware of this style of deck, Nova is the perfect hero to really highlight this. So, Dive Bomb is a event, obviously for 4, a little expensive, that you can only play when you have aerial. It is an aerial attack event, and it has the hero action attack, deal 7 damage to an enemy and 1 damage to each other enemy. We will, in a second, get to why this is so potent. Because 7 damage to it's probably going to go to the villain. If you need to throw 7 damage at a minion, that means that minion was probably beefy and it needs to go. But either way, Dive Bomb, on its surface, is already an okay card. I was around after Nova came out, so my entire existence with Marvel Champions is in a world where Nova already exists. But it was very synonymous. You have Dive Bomb and you have some other cards from this pack, and you just go wild. But I think this was the kind of card that was okay and then was redefined by a card that we will get to in a second. Then we've got Into the Fray, which I would say is it's kind of card that I would probably want to sub out at some point. It's not stellar, but either way, it is a 3-cost event, attack, deal 6 damage to a minion. For each point of excess damage dealt by this attack, remove 1 threat from the main scheme. Actually, now that I come to think about it, what we're doing with the Wasp, this is actually going to be extra potent. It's just on the surface, 6 damage, any overkill essentially removes threat from a scheme. It's the kind of thing that you want in aggression, because aggression has not historically been great at removing threat, so this is a way to do that, but at the same time, hopefully you're playing multiplayer and this is not as important. Then we've got No Quarter, which I did not realize was from the Nova pack, but it is a 2-cost event. It is an attack traded card with the requirement of a physical resource, which you don't care about because you have a bunch of wild, and deal 4 damage to an enemy. For each point of excessive damage dealt to that enemy by this attack, discard the top card of your deck and add each aggression card discarded this way to your hand. So this is just a nice way to get rid of a minion and hopefully buy yourself back 1 or 2 cards, or hopefully fill up your hand up with 1 or 2 cards. For the most part, this really only costs 1 because you already have the helmet around to help pay for this. That's going to fit that requirement, something that you're not necessarily worried about with Nova anyway. But yeah, this is a card that I've used in other places, and it's been very successful for me. It's been very successful in getting me some additional card draw. Then we've got 1 by 1, another Nova card. It costs 1, and it is an attack event. Deal 2 damage to an enemy. If that attack defeats that enemy, deal 2 damage to another enemy. So, or just deal damage to an enemy, but it's defeated, so whatever. Yeah, this is just nice in the way that you can, for 1, just sniper out 2 enemies, or just take out a minion, and then maybe hit the tough off of the villain or something. But this is a very versatile card. It's not the best card ever, but it definitely has its uses, and I've definitely gotten some use out of it. Then we got Pitchback, which I love with Thor, but it is a 1-cost event. That's why I like it for Thor. You need to have the aerial trait, and after your hero attacks, which can be an attack event or a basic attack, deal 4 damage to an enemy. So this is just a nice way to layer that on. Becomes just stellar. And yeah, I would even say that with Ironheart, she's right on the card. She also works very well with this card. Then we got Connection to the Worldmind, Everyday Hero, which is a resource that I do not get much use out of. While you are in a civilian, while you have the civilian trait, this card can be spent for any player and gains the text response. After you spend this card for a player, heal 1 damage from that player's identity. So yes, this is something that we don't have a lot of civilians. I think a lot of the champions, I think everything, maybe Gwen might also be a civilian. I think that every other character other than Spider-Ham, I think has a civilian trait. I know the champions do. But this is a kind of a niche resource that is nice just on the surface, can be a wild resource, but then if you are a civilian, you have all the more reason to use it. I think at this point, we have enough basic resources that this gets just kind of pushed to the side. But if you have the ability to heal a damage on a civilian identity, or if you just have the ability to heal a damage on an identity, that can be helpful. It's not the most critical thing, but it is something that I think you want in this deck. One, because you can have 3 copies of it, but also because it has an upside that you can get some advantage out of. Then the Power of Aggression. And, oh my god, this one's a doozy. I know we talked about this last week, but Champion's Mobile Bunker is a support. And when you can exhaust it, choose an identity with the champion's trait. The player who controls that identity may draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards from their hand. I don't know if there is any reason. May is very interesting here because May, I guess you could avoid drawing a extra encounter card if for some reason you're that concerned about that. But I don't know that there's utility for this. But right now, just the ability to discard 2 cards. I don't know if there's a hero that takes advantage of that, but it would be interesting if there was a champion's character that was like, yeah, I want to get cards into my discard pile because I'm going to do something with them. But either way, this is just a fun card. It is very good for champions. It's not trait locked necessarily, but it's kind of trait locked because the only way to kind of get around this is like, I don't think there is an honorary champions, or you use Rogue to get the champion's trait, and then you can let Rogue use this all willy-nilly. But either way, just a good way to draw through your deck. And when you're playing with Nova, this is just a nice way to pick and choose what you need and get rid of what you don't need, which might be Connection to the Worldmind because you're just going to use your support to get it back. Then we've got Fluid Motion, another Nova card. It is a 1-cost upgrade. Hero response after you play an attack event, which you have plenty of. Exhaust this card, your hero gets a +1 attack until the end of the phase. Max 1 per attack event. So this has 2, right? Yeah, having 2 is solid because you can pump up your stats. Just being able to take Nova and double his attack can be good. If you have both these out and you get to do an attack event and another attack event, and then suddenly you're swinging for 3, you ready up your helmet. Like, this does have a purpose. I have found that this is the kind of card that I think is going to be good, and sometimes it's not good. But when it is good, when you have the right amount of attack events to really take advantage of this, and Nova is sporting quite a bit of attack events here, this can just turn on, and this can just be a way to be a cheaper version of combat training. Just, you're consistently always going to have +1 attack, and at some point you may have +2 attack on a good amount of the time. And the last card to talk about in this deck is the card that brings everything together. This is what's going to take Dive Bomb. This is what's going to take No Quarter, 1x1, Pitchback, and like I almost forgot, but is going to make Into the Fray even more powerful. This brings all of your aggression attack events and makes them just so great. Hone a Technique is an aggression upgrade that costs 3. As a requirement of Genius Resource, and only 1 per player. First of all, you do not care about the requirements. You are just going to be able to pay them. But an interrupt of when you play an aggression attack event, if you paid for that event with a mental resource, increase the amount of damage that event deals by its printed cost. So this suddenly deals 11 and 5. This deals 9. This deals 6. This deals 3 and another 3. And this deals 5. I would say the most important ones here, ironically, are probably Into the Fray and Dive Bomb, because Into the Fray you can suddenly remove an awful lot of threat from a scheme, but being able to take your attack events, and actually, now that I start to think about it, let's just kind of do a little brain teaser here, or a pop quiz for me. Are there aggression events that came out in the last 2 years that this really boosts up? And the first one that comes to mind is Full Body Charge, maybe because I love Full Body Charge too much. But beyond that, I don't know that there are a lot of attack events that I would really put up on a pedestal. But let's just take a look at that real quick. Go back here. And ironically, let me just see here. Ironically, I'm thinking of, yep, okay, so basically since Nova came out, we only really have one page of attack events. So we've already had that card. You know, I'm going to say it. Full Body Charge is definitely a candidate for this. We already had Clobber. Take that, it becomes 10. I think you are okay to put Hone Technique is probably good with pretty much any attack event. I feel like the only ones that are really jumping out to me here are Full Body Charge, which is expensive, but the expensiveness helps everything get better. Helps Hone Technique be more potent. And maybe Get Out of My Way. Only, yeah, I would say Get Out of My Way. Precision Strike, I think just because it's so cheap and being able to bump that up to 3. But Full Body Charge is the only card that really comes to mind. Take that also, but I would say, this is biased. This is completely biased, but I say Full Body Charge, Out of My Way, and Precision Strike are all cards that have come out in the last 2 years that I would definitely say are candidates for. Also, maybe you want to add them to a deck using Hone Technique. But either way, Hone Technique is just a very stellar card. It's a reason to go get the Nova pack, and it is very, very good, and it will just make everything better. It will just make your attack events better. It is almost one that I'm willing to put 3 of in, even knowing that I can only put 1 of them into play. But either way, that is this Nova deck. There's probably multiple lists that look almost exactly like this out on there, but either way, thank you Shady Viking for putting this deck up, because this is exactly what I would say is the next step for Nova. You can go in any direction with him. I think Protection is maybe the underdog here, but Aggression is very, very, very good for Nova. But that is enough of that. Let's jump back and let's go talk about the Obligation and the Nemesis kit. Alright, and we are back to talk about the Obligation and Nemesis set, and we were going to start with the Obligation, Weight of the World. Like I said, Obligation, give to the Sam Alexander player. While this card is in play, Supernova Helmet cannot ready. The alter ego action of Exhaust Sam Alexander, remove this Obligation from the game. So, this is, I think, a very, very loose Obligation. It does not weigh you down a lot, but it's not difficult to deal with. I think it weighs you down a lot. If you don't have access to the Supernova Helmet, you're suddenly finding yourself with a lot of dead turns, because suddenly, like I was just raving about, you have the ability to generate wild resources. You have the ability to use your hand as your hand and not as resources, and having that taken away from you is very impactful, and this will trip up Nova. And I would say I would put Nova on the lower end of how much you go to Alter Ego, and maybe I'm just playing it wrong. I don't feel like, in my knowledge, in my time playing the game, I don't know that I really remember Nova going to Alter Ego a whole lot. It happens, but I feel like you don't spend as much time in Alter Ego, so the cost of going to to alter ego to do this is notable. I think you do it if your health's getting low, but you do have the ability to slow down your health loss a little bit. But then you also go because you need to get your helmet back because you got caught off guard or something. But yeah, Weight of the World can have attacks to it. And it has attacks in the fact that you need to come out of hero mode and you are so strong in hero form and you need to go in alter ego, which is something that I don't think you're going to just happen to be in alter ego and when this comes up. I think this is going to be one where you have to choose to go to alter ego because you need to deal with this. You want to deal with it quickly because, like I said, Supernova Helmet is so critical to what you're trying to do. And then we've got Warbringer. Oh, we should do this too. We got Warbringer and the side scheme Bring the War. So Warbringer is a 1 scheme 3 attack minion with the Brute and Chitauri trait, which I didn't catch. I don't think I've caught before today. 5 health, and the force interrupt of when Warbringer attacks you, he gets +1 for that attack for each card with a printed wild resource in your hand. That attack gains overkill. He can attack for a lot. Luckily, he does not have quick strike. He is very potent and very dangerous in that sense, where he can swing for 7, and that can be very scary. Hopefully you are ready. When he comes down, you do have the ability to kind of react. He is just outside of what your events can do, although you could do attack for 1, pot shot for 4, get rid of him. He is very easy to address if you're ready, but if you're not ready, you have to basically divert your plans. Let's talk about Bring the War. It is a side scheme with when revealed, each player discards 1 card they control with a printed wild resource. For each card discarded this way, place 1 threat here. So, oh, sorry, this isn't from your hand. Okay, so this is just from anywhere, I suppose. Oh, wait, no, discards 1 control. Oh, no, they control. So yeah, this would be in play. Sorry, I got tripped up there. I would actually say that this, for Nova, he doesn't have things in play that have a wild resource because he's so event focused, and his support and his ally and his upgrade, they don't have the wild resource on them. So this actually could be a very shallow event. I mean, it goes from 2 up to like maybe 3 or 4. The rest of the table that could change because so often identity specific allies will have a wild resource on them. So that is something to consider. But I would say that these two are scary. They can get out of hand. You do want to address them right away, but they're not the kind of thing where I'm sitting there going, I do not want to hit them. I just want to be ready when I hit them. And the side scheme, I don't know. The side scheme doesn't scare me too much because I actually think that it is designed very well. It reads like it could get out of hand, and it actually doesn't. We've got 2 copies of War Delivery, a treachery with when revealed, you may spend a wild resource. If you do not, the villain and Warbringer each attack you, even if you are in alter ego form. And then you want to play the wild resource. And the boost ability of place 1 threat on the main scheme for each card with a printed wild resource in your hand. So this is maybe the card in the Nemesis kit that I'm most worried about, because once it's in play, you have to be very mindful of what your hand looks like and what the main scheme looks like, because this can scheme you out of nowhere. This can suddenly just add 3, 4, 5 threat to the main scheme, and hopefully if you're playing a multiplayer, it hits other people who do not have such a high potency of wild resources. But this is one where I don't think it's ever actually beat me, but it's the kind of thing that the Nova player has, or me, or whoever it is, the Nova player has always been like, hey, just be mindful of how many wild resources you have, because like making decisions like a villain that adds threat when it attacks. If you have that option, I think Kang does that, but I'm trying to think of other villains that do that. But just anyway, anything that can augment the amount of threat being added that's not being an alter ego, this can come into play. This can really mess with you, or this can be revealed during the boost step and really mess with you. If it's revealed and the villain attacks you in alter ego, that can really be a setback, especially because you went to alter ego for a specific reason. But yeah, I would say the scariest part of this is the boost ability, because I actually think that it has the possibility to scheme you out very easily. And last card here is the war. The war's been brought. I love these quotes. It is a treachery with Surge. And when revealed, discard X cards from the top of the encounter deck, where X is equal to the number of printed wild resources on cards in your hand, cards under your control, and cards in your discard pile. This can get you an acceleration token very easily. I don't know that I've really thought too much about this card, but oh my, this basically is like if it's not in your deck, it counts towards this, and it can be a lot. This is another one of those effects that's kind of like one-off. I can't think of another card that works like this, that so much pushes the encounter deck to just get completely milled out. And yeah, this is potent for sure. But yes, that is Nova. He is a hero that, like I said previously, maybe not the most powerful hero in the game, but very consistent, very well-rounded, and he is a synergy and combo dream. Somehow we are already done with the Sinister Motives wave. That was a very quick 6 weeks. But we are going to explore the history of Marvel Champions a little bit going forward. I don't know for sure if there will necessarily be an episode. I don't necessarily know if we will be jumping into a new player guide next week. I'm in the middle of a very big video, and I think I would rather just focus my energy on getting that nipped in the bud before moving on. But yeah, I look forward to whatever we're going to be covering next. I think we're going to go more towards the beginning of the game and just start to explore some of the other heroes that I've gotten some requests for. But either way, until next time, thank you very much and have a great day.